Alameda LAFCO meeting, January 10th, 2019.
We were discussing, mine is on.
Yours is off. It'll
Yes.
go green.
You press the button. Hello, the mayor who claims to be part, well, let's see, they think you're both the mayor of Dublin and Livermore. I thought that was really interesting last time. That one comment, they got confused.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I thought the mayor had.
Yes, we do.
Then I would like to call the meeting to order, and we'll have the pledge of allegiance, and
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now roll call.
Commissioner Wieskamp,
Here.
Commissioner Haggerty, Commissioner Marchand,
Here.
Commissioner Splendorio,
Here.
Commissioner Thorne,
Here.
Commissioner Miley, Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Haubert, Commissioner Valle, Commissioner Von Heater Leopold,
Here.
Commissioner Pico.
This is a time for public comment. Anyone from the audience may address the commission on any matter not listed on the agenda and within the jurisdiction of the Alameda LAFCO. We can't act upon these matters not appearing on the agenda. So speakers are limited to 3 minutes unless somebody's hiding behind the forum. I don't think we see anyone. All right. Then we will move on to approval of the minutes, November 8th, regular meeting. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion made second. Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the budget update for 2018 and 19 and the year-end projections.
Thank you, Chair. This item is for the Commission to review the budgeted and actual transactions through December 31st, 2018. Actuals through the first 6 months totaled around $221,971 and represents 28% of the budgeted total, which is half of the fiscal year complete. Staff projects the Commission is on pace to finish the fiscal year with an operating surplus of around $121,000. And this mainly can be attributed to staffing contingency and limited use of planning consultants. The Commission's budget was adopted at the May 2018 meeting, and the report is being presented to you all to accept and file and provide direction to staff as needed.
Okay. Comments, questions? Anyone? All right.
Move acceptance.
Motion?
Move acceptance.
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. We're working along here. The next item is the proposed comprehensive update to the fee schedule. This is a public hearing.
So, thank you, Chair. The item returns to the Commission after its second reading at the November meeting, and
I
after
think you're going to have to speak directly
Okay.
into the microphone. It's
Yeah, the mics are very directional.
Staff has received no comments ahead of the December 26th deadline, and the fee schedule remains intact from the last reading. The fee schedule proposes 3 changes to improve cost recovery and implementation. The first modification assigned flat charges based on a predetermined and rounded estimate of total staff hours by a composite hourly staff rate, and this can be found in attachment 1 of the staff report. The second modification increases the current hourly staff rate for the executive officer and clerk at $125 per hour and $75 per hour respectively to a composite hourly staff rate of $164 per hour, and this is based on budgeted expenses for the fiscal year that incorporates both labor and administrative overhead. And the composite hourly staff rate also now includes the analyst position as well. The third and last modification includes a narrative introduction that organizes a listing of policy statements as it relates to the membership's priority setting, collecting, reducing, or waiving fees, and reflect minor changes to LAFCO's current fee policies. Now, staff recommends the proposed update meets the Commission's interest in setting and collecting fees in a fair and responsive manner. And staff recommends that the commission adopt the draft resolution approving the proposed update to the fee schedule with any desired changes, and specify, please, that the effective date of the update commence on March 11th, 2019. And just one more thing to note, after the commission granted a 45-day public review, and no comments were received ahead of the December 26th deadline.
Okay, comments or questions? Anyone? All right, do we have a motion? Okay. Is public hearing?
Yeah.
I think it is. Well, we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone who has a comment, question? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Now do we have a motion or any discussion?
I'll move for approval.
Okay, motion?
A second.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. My goodness, we are moving. Maybe this is a good place.
I think so.
We saw it, so.
We'll probably get to find out, won't we? Okay. The next item is concerning dissolution of enacted special districts, the San Lorenzo Library County Service Area and the Livermore Amador Valley Sewer County Service Area. This too is a public hearing. So we'll have a staff report.
Thank you, Chair. The Commission will consider initiating the dissolution of the San Lorenzo County Service Area and the Livermore Amador Valley Sewer County Service Area after the State Controller's Office notified LAFCO on November 6, 2018 that both districts are inactive. Within 90 days of receiving this notice, LAFCOs are required to either initiate the dissolution or determine that the districts are not inactive. Additionally, one public hearing must be held, but the dissolution is exempt from any protest proceedings. LAFCOs must then dissolve the district within 90 days following the adoption of the initiation of the dissolution. And an active special district must meet all of the following criteria set forth in Government Code Section 56042, which states it must be a special district as defined in Government Code Section 56036. The special district has no financial transactions in the previous fiscal year. It has no assets and liabilities and has no outstanding debts, judgments, litigation, contracts, liens, or claims. Now, both the San Lorenzo Library CSA and the Livermore Amador Valley Sewer Study CSA were included in Alameda LAFCO's 2005 and 2006 municipal service reviews, respectively, and they were determined by the Commission that they are also inactive. They both are dependent special districts and were used as financing sources for special projects and studies. Their status has remained unchanged since the MSRs were prepared, and the county does have a pending application with LAFCO to dissolve the said districts. Staff has consulted with the County Auditor's Office and the County Public Works Department, which have agreed with staff determination that pursuant to Government Code Section 56042, the districts are inactive and should be dissolved. Staff recommends the Commission move forward and adopt the draft resolutions to initiate the dissolution of both districts, San Lorenzo Library County Service Area and the Livermore Amador Valley Sewer Study County Service Area, and that it meets all the requirements under Government Code Section 56042, and also hold one public hearing at our March 14th meeting.
Not today.
Not today.
Okay. Any questions of staff?
One question. Now, I sit on the LAFCO board, which ultimately became the provider for the discharge pipeline. There would be no perceived conflict of interest that I would be on one board voting to dissolve what might have been a competing agency.
I'll let council answer that.
It's obscure, but I figured I'd ask.
No, there is no conflict, and generally speaking, when you sit as LAFCO commissioners, you don't have conflicts, and LAFCO in its policies has provided that city members and special district members don't have conflicts when they hear matters like that.
Oh, not as my city, but as a board member for what would have been a competing agency, this the Livermore Amador Valley Sewer Study.
Correct, it's not a conflict.
Okay, great, that's all I wanted to know.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Just a real, I mean, I know the library has two CSAs, one in San Lorenzo, which we see here, the other is in Castro Valley. I'm just wondering, is the Castro Valley one active, or did it just?
From the state controller's office, they said that only the two districts in the county, which are San Lorenzo Library CSA and the Livermore Amador Valley Sewer Study, are inactive. But that is something that staff will check.
Okay.
But from my understanding, Castro Valley is active.
Okay, Glenn?
The two special districts, I take it that, I don't even know Mayor Marchand was on it, but they haven't voiced any desire one way or another. We haven't heard from them. And they know about this, right?
Yes, they're aware. The County Public Works Department and the librarian, the county librarian director, they're all aware, and they both agree that they should be dissolved.
So there's no support with it.
No, I'm not on the sewer study, JPA, I'm on law.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So, but since there were two studies
Right.
to
This is where
discharge,
it ended up, yes.
I'm on one of them, the other one is, we're dissolving today, or next month.
Are we good? All right. We're going to hold the public hearing at the March 14th meeting. Do I have a motion?
Also move.
Okay.
I'll move the
Is
staff
this for
recommendation.
alternative one?
Yeah, alternative one, the staff recommendation.
Okay.
Second?
All right, we've got a second. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our good luck at moving forward is continuing. Okay. The next item is the review of the draft study schedule for 2019
And that's
through
3 hours
2024.
after the water was shut off.
Excuse me, Chair, we have to open the public hearing for that last one.
Well, I thought I had said that, but then you told me I didn't have to.
My
Maybe I
apologies.
just-
Well, the public hearing is gonna be in March for
Okay.
that, but we still needed it.
Because we have to do it once, right?
Yes.
So that makes sense to have that. And we might have some public at that meeting, so it makes sense to open it then. Okay. Then we're on to 8, and that is the draft study schedule for 2019-2024.
So this item is brought to the Commission to review a draft 5-year study schedule that represents a new methodical approach to managing and telegraphing LAFCO's planning requirement to regularly perform and focus on regional municipal service reviews to inform sphere of influence updates. State law directs LAFCOs to review and update as appropriate sphere of influences for all cities and special districts every 5 years, and specifies LAFCOs must inform their sphere updates by preparing comprehensive studies known as municipal service reviews to determine the availability and adequacy of local government services relative to current and future community needs. The legislative purpose of the municipal service review is to ensure LAFCOs are proactive and independently overseeing local government agencies and their public accountability and efficiencies. Additionally, municipal service reviews provide LAFCOs with source documentation in initiating regulatory actions such as formations, consolidations, mergers, dissolutions of one or more local agencies. Alameda LAFCO is obliged under state law to prepare the next cycle of municipal service reviews and sphere of influence updates beginning in 2019, and as such, the statutory compliance supports the need in developing a study schedule. Staff has prepared the proposed study schedule covering the 2019-2024 cycle for the Commission consideration and approval with or without adjustments. The proposed study schedule draws on staff's observations in reviewing work in earlier cycles, as well as identifying potential boundary and governance areas of interest over the cover period. The draft has been prepared with input from the Policy and Budget Committee and is being presented for additional discussion and feedback ahead of initiating a formal public review before returning for final approval at the March 14th meeting. The proposed study schedule provides for the review and update of all 14 cities and 33 special districts in Alameda County and include a comprehensive fire protection and emergency medical services study, a community services study, a countywide police services study, a comprehensive Tri-Valley area study, a healthcare services study, and a study on the Alameda County Resource and Conservation District. The purpose of a cyclical planning document is for LAFCO to encourage and support local agency transparency via municipal service review process, as well as forecast future boundary and governance areas of interest. Additionally, the importance of establishing a study schedule is to provide explicit and transparent direction in managing the Commission's planning responsibilities and provide notice to local agencies and the public with respect to pending LAFCO activities. Staff believes the proposed study schedule aptly positions the Commission to meet the agency's directive to prepare municipal service reviews and sphere of influence updates over a relatively short period in a manner consistent with the local conditions and interests. Staff recommends the Commission approve the proposed study schedule with any desired changes and then initiate a 45-day public review and comment period for final action in March.
Okay, questions? Comments?
Thank you. So, Rachel, this seems different than what we've done in the past. Is that correct?
It is correct.
So, in the past, what we've taken is, in essence, cities, special districts separately, and looked at all these different services within and that. Are we going to be, instead we're approaching by the service and then evaluating each city, special district, et cetera, in the context of the service? Is that correct?
Yes, for all of the municipal service reviews except for the Tri-Valley region study. But the ones 4 out of the 6, I believe, are service specific.
So we'll be looking at police services for the entire county, in essence.
Exactly.
All right. Then can I ask then, I do not see stormwater, I do not see sewer. Is there a reason why those are not included in there?
Because we're currently under our wastewater, stormwater, flood control, and sewer study right now. I did not include that in this cycle.
The next question is, I also do not see broadband.
Okay.
Okay.
Which,
Good point.
I mean, for 10 years or so, I thought that is, I'm not saying it's a municipal service, I'm not at that point, but I do believe it's a vital public utility, and however it's provided, it's important for having Wi-Fi in this particular building, in addition to having children be able to learn adequately in school, to seniors being able to book their next trip to Reno or whatever.
Maybe they're going back to school too.
Or going back to school. I'm obviously pointing to something that I find is important. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about it, but I just look at that as maybe perhaps a quasi-municipal service that should be evaluated.
Staff would be happy to bring that back to the Commission at the March meeting and include broadband services within the study schedule.
Okay. Add it to something else. That makes sense. I would think it could be. Any other points? That was really good. He's thinking about both youth and seniors and what we want to do, being able to do it in the most comprehensive way.
Well, when you're accused of being as old as a senior and thinking like you're 14.
Good to know that. Okay. Any other questions, comments? I don't think I see any public, just on a volunteer basis. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the study schedule? Ralph says yes.
Second.
Okay, discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And you'll come back and adding broadband to the March 15th meeting review of it. This is the start of a 45-day public review. All right, the next item is the supplemental report on LAFCO's operational options and other related items. The Commission will receive a supplemental report conducted by Burks and Associates recommending LAFCO seek an alternative operation model transitioning away from the county of Alameda in response to our memorandum of understanding with the county set to expire as of June 30th. Staff recommends for Alameda County LAFCO to continue to contract services with the county, but as a public-facing entity retain its own office space. Staff requests the commission authorize the executive officer to continue negotiations with the county and amending its MOU to best reflect LAFCO's current operational needs. And we'll have a staff report.
Thank you. As part of Alameda LAFCO's strategic plan of 2018 and 2022, a key action item is for the Commission to complete a study of various operational options ranging from its current arrangement with the county in contracting, staffing, and support services to the agency seeking full independence that includes within the report general implementation guidelines and range of costs and other implementation factors. On March 28, 2018, the Commission contracted with Burks & Associates to provide a study that explored the range of LAFCO administrative governance options available. The report outlined an overview of options that identified issues and questions to frame ongoing discussions with preliminary cost implications at a summary level. As per the request of staff, a more in-depth analysis was deemed necessary to conclude the best governing model for Alameda LAFCO, and at its September 20th, 2018 meeting, Burks & Associates was directed to provide a supplementary report to the Commission, including a cost-benefit analysis, potential succession planning, and recommendation on the model most fit for Alameda LAFCO's current needs. Ultimately, Burks & Associates supplemental report presented before the Commission today recommends Alameda LAFCO transition from receiving support services from the county and begin to operate on a more independent basis. The report indicates that the full cost of independence would increase LAFCO's annual budget by $26,000. Now, while the consultant has done a wonderful job in outlining the baseline recommendations and advantages of going independent, a transition process will take time and require investment with an associated substantial workload. The county has been crucial to the proper functioning of Alameda LAFCO and provides a range of services at limited costs. The system is certainly not broke, and although there is a potential alternative that may be better in the long term, staff finds that there is no impetus to change this at this time. Nevertheless, staff does recommend the Commission explore options of retaining its own office space, perhaps to increase accessibility and distinguish LAFCO's role among the public. Separate offices could accommodate additional workstations, more general storage, and potential for public workshops, while also providing a more collaborative work environment among LAFCO staff that is currently dispersed within the County Administrator's office. Staff is in communication with the County Administrator and support staff, and believes both parties are agreeable to continue negotiations with the existing MOU contract. Staff recommends the Commission accept and file the report on LAFCO's supplemental operational study and authorize the Executive Officer in conjunction with legal counsel to continue negotiations with the county in amending its MOU ahead of the June 30th deadline. And staff would also like to note that Richard Bergson from Bergson Associates is in the audience and is willing to answer any questions the Commission may have regarding the supplemental report.
Okay. Question, Deb? I just saw you, and you looked through the right. Hello.
How are you?
We're all fine
Sorry, I was
in this new location.
coming from San Francisco.
Oh my goodness, yes. Okay. Discussion, any items before we open to see if, do we want any questions about answers from?
Is Jody going to talk about?
Oh, of course we are. And I'm going to see if we have any questions of people who did the report. Does that make sense? Okay. I believe you have a representative, right?
Yes, Richard Bergson, if you want to give us your thoughts on the study, please.
So if there are questions about the
Turn your mic
report,
on.
the supplemental report, this is the time to ask those. Anyone?
I would like clarification.
Okay,
you know,
Glenn?
and just what's being asked of us. I'm going back up here before Richard's report.
Okay,
Just taking a look at the staff report.
okay,
So accept and file the report and authorize the EO in conjunction with county council to continue negotiations to amend its MOU ahead of 34, continue consideration of the report or continue this to another date. Okay, and the recommendation is receive action. Okay, all right, now I understand. Because you said a lot of things, Rachel, I just wanted to look at
Absolutely.
that. Okay,
Thank you.
All right. Nate?
Yes. On the budget, Richard, it's hard to believe the full independence is only going to cost an additional $26,000. Can you kind of just walk us through that?
Which page?
I'm going to make page 10.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Well, that's the primary factor that accounts for that difference would be the office space, the additional office space cost. I did review a number of the other costs. Obviously, the personnel costs are probably the largest portion of your budget, and I made no assumptions about changes to personnel costs. I assume that the salaries are the same, benefits are similar. I did do a brief review of, well, I assume that you carry forward the same staff, but if you did have to go out and find new staff, I would expect the salaries and benefits would probably be similar. So those don't change. And also I did review a number of the other costs. The county does charge an overhead management charge as part of their CAO involvement, and so that cost would basically go away, although it's offset probably by LAFCO staff having to spend more time dealing with a number of services, and it's hard to quantify that particular cost. So that's an offsetting reduction. Legal counsel would be similar, although after reviewing other LAFCOs, I concluded that there could be maybe a 10% increase in using private counsel instead of county counsel. So those are the primary differences, and those add up to that $26,000 difference. And again, I've made a number of assumptions documented in the report about the cost of office space and so forth, and it's hard to pin that down exactly at this point, but this was my best estimate, at least order of magnitude at this point in time.
Okay, so I understand you're making assumptions about personnel. Okay. Then, in your review of the other LAFCOs, those that are independent, how do their costs stack up?
Well, I was actually surprised the consistency between the LAFCOs. And again, I think probably the major difference would be perhaps in office costs, because you get a very low rate on your office space, partly because it may be less space than other LAFCOs have, but also being provided by the county, what they charge you is very low. So that's probably the biggest difference. And of course, the staffing costs, again, which account for most of LAFCO's budgets, and Santa Clara has 4 full-time equivalents, so that pushes their costs up. But generally speaking, I found the costs pretty similar, and other differences between them are mainly due to different levels of, say, MSR activity, how much work is done in-house versus contracted. Some LAFCOs, many of them use contract planners for their work, so that accounts for the other difference. But generally, I was a little surprised actually to see that they were as similar, notwithstanding some of those fundamental differences.
Okay. Then my final question is, with the transition, would there be any anticipation, I don't know if you can expect staff or somebody else, that the personnel costs would be changing, personnel contracting costs would be changing?
It would be my assumption, that would depend on the negotiations, but it would be my assumption that there would be some changes in that. that it would be due to what the county was open to negotiating with, and if we were able to perhaps remain on some of the same benefits, but that would have to be negotiated.
So there's a possibility that with full independence, depending on the personnel situation and negotiations, that there could be some cost increases.
Yes.
And I'll just clarify one additional point. In the case of full independence, again, I assume no change to your staffing levels, but you do have some positions that are less than full-time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you did have to fill those, it might be a little more difficult to fill them on a part-time basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so potentially that could affect, but that would also affect the service levels as well.
I'm just curious, as you were looking at this, did you look at the impact on PERS?
No, I assumed a similar benefits package, assumed it was also from PERS, and that any unfunded liabilities would carry over. LAFCO would continue to be responsible for those, but
So
potentially there'd be a change.
That could be another cost, though, correct?
Well, I assume that you're currently paying for unfunded liabilities now as part of your arrangement with the county, or I assume that they should be charging you for those staff costs.
Shall I stand up? Because I feel like this is like an answer.
You may come forward, give you a chance to stand up.
First of all,
By the way, welcome back to this
how
chamber.
are you?
Ask her to-
Happy New Year, everybody. I just want to kind of clarify a couple of things on the staff report. One is that we haven't started the negotiations. I'm here representing Susan as the county administrator, so I want you to say that we have not made any progress on this discussion. The other thing too, the mention of CalPERS. The county is not CalPERS with the exception of fire. So you're self-funded.
We're 37 now.
Yeah.
You're
So
right,
it is.
I stand corrected.
Yeah. No, it's in the report too. It says something about CalPERS.
You're right.
So I looked at the report going, CalPERS, this is not fire. So this is, the county funds to determine. And so we're anxious, not anxious, but we were looking forward to seeing kind of like what the discussion happens. I think one of the things I want to clarify is that the county has always seen LAFCO as an independent entity, and we've contracted. So this is going to make sense. I think more importantly is that it was addressed in the EO staff report when it came down to, it's got to make sense for both sides. And I think that the county did a lot of things in that transition from being totally independent that probably didn't capture all the costs associated. And Richard wouldn't know about these things because there was no discussion that occurred with the county. Because when somebody's absent, or for example, when the EO left, there was no pause about who took the place. And there was no charge for that too. And so when there's backup, when Sandy's not there, there's always a backup too. So there was additional cost. Not significant, I think that the turnaround, the staff report was done really quickly. So, and you're not going to get all the fine tuning, but the idea is that the discussions and negotiations have not started as of yet. So we're waiting to hear kind of like what you guys are desiring, and then seeing how that works for the county. Because I'm putting on my county hat, and then Susan works for the board of supervisors, and see how that would work.
Okay, thank you. Question?
So,
Well,
John, you had the consultant had mentioned the management fee that we charge. Can you explain a little bit as to what that means?
I think that you have everything from your personnel to your processes. I think the amount is insignificant for kind of like, everything as far as processing, there's training, there's all that other things that are not included in this discussion. What you get from LAFCO training is not the same that you can get from across, the street at Alameda County Training Center. So there are additional benefits that haven't been fully costed out. And I would expect a consultant to know all these things. So the idea is that as we explore this, and we sharpen the pencil, because it's been a while since we looked at the costing. I mean, IT alone, you've got overhead, but you've got website management, you've got uploading, you've got all those things that if you're doing those on an hourly basis. So when we sit down, we're going to reevaluate all the costing. And then just to see where we can be. to be honest with you, is that if it's the desire of LAFCO's board to transition, the discussion will be a little different, because we need to be able to make sure that staffing, that you become quicker independently when it comes down to staffing, that you do your own contract, because it's a hybrid if we do, but there's a lot of things to discuss, and we've got, and I've asked the CEO to come up with a list of things that they want to see refined to see if the county can even do that. Because there are certain policies and procedures that are county, and they're not going to be, you can't pick and choose. So those are the things that we're going to talk in consideration.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I guess for me, I've been struggling to try to figure out what it is we're trying to fix here. And I think, quite frankly, all we've done is open a nice little can of worms as Joni started rattling off all the stuff that we've been getting pretty much for free all this time. And maybe it's not going to be that way anymore. But I think the bottom line is, we're coming in here for a meeting for probably an hour. And then we're gone for 2 months. We're gone 2 months. And then we come in for another meeting and maybe it goes an hour and a half. I mean, but quite frankly, other than that, there's no oversight. None. And I don't understand why we would think of spending more money to go into a situation where there's absolutely no oversight. And quite frankly, this LAFCO is not like other LAFCOs. And we have ballot box measures that have pretty much said how the land in the East County is going to govern. And quite frankly, that is not going to change. And that's the majority of the land within this county. That's the majority of our work. That's the majority of the annexations. And to me, it makes no sense that an agency that over the past several years has kind of shrunk its jurisdictional level due to the fact of Measure D over the last 20 years, and then put ourselves in a position where we're going to try to get bigger. And in the meantime, we're going to spend more money. To me, that seems like irresponsible government. And I would think if we weren't getting a good service from the county, then we would go down that road. But I don't think we're getting that. I think we're getting a pretty good bang for our buck here. And I think that anything that takes us and puts us into another building, look, you want to locate this in East County, they go to the Martinelli Center and work out in Livermore. Maybe Nate and I can make room at the fairgrounds in Pleasanton in our offices. But if it's the Oakland issue, and we don't feel we're close enough to the constituents, which I don't think is the problem, but there's others, move it down to Hayward and put it in the CDA, if that's what we're talking here. But to spend more money to create another level of government goes against, personally, me, everything that I have done since I got here. And I don't know what it is we're trying to fix here.
Okay. Val?
So I've been involved with the subcommittee that's been looking at this. And I think from my perspective, what we're trying to accomplish is that we do have the MOU with the county that's coming up. And I think the study was probably a good input into what I think we needed to look at to say whether or not, how we want to revise that MOU. And I think what the committee and staff has concluded is basically to stay with the county is probably the best alternative. It may be the idea of looking at relocating the office to, like Scott, you mentioned several locations. That's kind of what we were thinking about. Maybe at the fairgrounds, maybe at the Martinelli Center, maybe at the CDA. Those are all three options we could look at. That would give staff, put them a little bit closer to, like you said, to what's actually happening here in the valley, as opposed to being Oakland where there really isn't much going on. So I think that's, I feel comfortable with the study. We've looked at the alternatives, and I think at the end of the day, we've said, well, okay, I think we're happy with what we're getting from the county, and we hope that the county and staff can negotiate the MOU, and we don't really have a lot of time left. It expires in June, so it's got to move on. And if we haven't completely accounted for all of our costs, we probably should.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that it was a good exercise for the county, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because you know that when the transition occurred, I wasn't there, but it is that with everything I've seen from the county, is that when there is an emerging organization or something, they do their best to kind of facilitate that. And sometimes they will not get their pins as sharpened as possible, but taking a look at some of the changes that have occurred over the years since LAFCO has been independent, things have changed. And so the adaptation, and I'm going to put my own 2 cents in. I'm not representing the county administrator at this, but I can tell you my own perspective. I think that there has been a little push-pull with LAFCO, Alameda LAFCO, and the county, and that has to do with communications. I think that there was an assumption that somehow the county didn't want to do certain things or didn't advise you. I think one of the things that needs to happen, and I think that you are a board that I've had the privilege to work for, that the idea is that when there is a push-pull, those things need to be brought up, and then there needs to be follow-up done. You don't get to have one person's perspective on it. And that's the way that I was always taught. Because there were times that there was push and pull that I was involved in. And so the idea is that even reading the report about the appearance of a conflict that Alameda has as far as influencing or anything like that, when it comes down to policy pieces with LAFCO, I have not seen it. So if that was something different, or, that was the part where I take a look at it because I'm putting on close to collectively 30 years of experience when it comes down to representing the story. So that's what I will tell you. But if there is a desire to upgrade staffing or whatever the case may be, you need to get a clear story. You need to get a response from the administrator's perspective, because I think you also pay that overhead cost to get some of her wisdom, to say, here's what I see, here's how the workload goes. And you're right, that when it comes down to kind of managing it, it is not something that I would respectfully burden you guys to be able to do the performance evaluations and to do the corrective actions. Because as much as we think we have perfect employees, and we usually do, there are times that you have to go down a disciplinary pathway. And I don't think that this would be something that would be joyful for this group to do. So, and that's just me talking. So not talking to the county administrator.
Okay. Anyone else with comments?
I have comments.
Sure.
Well, I think I think this is a very useful exercise to identify and just cognizant of the fact that we did at the very least appear independent. I'm not so sure that having a separate storefront necessarily creates that appearance. I think most people are more electronic, and our own website looks like it's independent, probably gets us most of the way there. But I think this is more, if we get down to the nuts and bolts here, this is about negotiating an MOU. And Richard, in his report, on page 8 of his report, page 37, identifies, as with any relationship, you need to tweak it every once in a while. And Richard identifies a few things. But some of them go to independence, some of it just go maybe to a lack of communication. But in the middle of the page, it says, should be revised more. The MOU should be revised to more clearly indicate specific FTE's commitment to LAFCO, prioritize employee commitments to LAFCO, and designate that LAFCO retains a primary role in staff decision. My charge would be that there's your message. Work on it. That's what you should try to negotiate and get a little happiness exactly on those issues.
And I would just say for MOU purposes, that you would not have the amount of staffing in your MOU, because you do that through your budget process. So you want to hamstring yourself, you have to modify the MOU. So I would just be cognizant of that.
Anything further, Slant?
No, like I said, I think this is a great exercise, and I think it's really more about setting a stage to negotiate the MOU, and there's little tweaks that need to happen. Yeah, it's not surprising.
Anybody?
Yeah, so in negotiating MOU, who's negotiating on behalf of LAFCO?
Staff and council.
So, like the chair or vice chair are not involved in those conversations?
They're not involved at the moment, but they could be.
Because, I'm not sitting here as a county supervisor, I'm sitting here as a LAFCO commissioner, so I want to make sure the best interest of LAFCO are being considered in the negotiations.
Thank you.
I actually would like them to see that there be a commissioner involved.
A commissioner.
Well, involved only because, I mean, you are technically county employees and you're negotiating with sort of your boss. Sort of. Yeah, sort of.
They do that every day.
Yeah, I
I
understand.
mean, there's county departments that represent healthcare that have to go in.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand, but I'm just saying, maybe having another person in the room, it might make it feel more comfortable. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Anyone else? If not, I think it's been a worthwhile study. I don't think we've got, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I don't think anyone was out to get anybody. The subject came up, should we look at others? You guys, I do not want to be Marin LAFCO. Doesn't make sense here. I do think that most of the activities since I've been on LAFCO have been around the Tri-Valley and the county unincorporated area, Castro Valley, that whole area. You know, so a lot of activity for LAFCO is out here. But I see nothing wrong with the idea, if it works, to have it in a county facility out here. We've got county facilities, if there's space, I don't know that. But if there is, that might be a reasonable assumption. I think we've had a good relationship, but I think like any relationship, I don't want a divorce. I want us to come together and come up with something that's reasonable. And I think the commissioner has been very involved in looking at it as Ralph. You know, I think he would stand there with negotiation, trying to be useful and helpful. And I think it would make us feel comfortable that we have had a good study and that we're following up on it. So that would be, I think that was a good suggestion. Scott?
Yeah, so, Madam Chair, what I would suggest, I was a little fuzzy on the two alternatives that were before us, because one is just asking for more. Alternative two is to continue the consideration of the report and just continue to ask for more information as needed. And the other one is to continue to work with the county council in amending the MOU. And so, I mean, I would go for option one, but I would take it one step further, that if it's the desire of this commission to move out of Oakland, that it be sited in another county building in East County. And I would make that as the motion.
And were you willing to have Ralph as our sort of representative?
Well, I'd like to split him because he's an attorney.
Okay.
But he's really good looking.
I'd recommend this one too.
Well,
Our split?
I don't mind doing it together. I appreciate the confidence, but I
Do it together.
All right.
Do it together.
Two representatives are better than one.
Yeah.
Right.
Do it together. 'Cause
If you guys don't mind, do you guys mind?
No. Are you both willing to commit to this?
Yeah.
And I think, also not just because Swen's an attorney, but I know Swen's represents a
He
lot
is.
of conferences and stuff, and
So, who's a second?
Well, it's like you are a supervisor, we have mayors, we have all of this other roles we play, but in this case, they're looking out for LAFCO's interests. And I think the county understands that.
May I just interject?
Yeah.
I think the CEO needs to present a list that the county needs to take a look at. And
Okay.
that the idea is that what I don't want to do is it be a fruitless exercise if there are things that the county can't move on when it comes down to personnel practices.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
And so the idea is that
Before all this discussion, we really need a second on motion. I mean, that's kind of where we're operating.
I'll second.
Ralph says we
Okay,
don't
good, thanks.
There we go. And
But
so,
I would say, Jody, to you, look, and this goes back to where I don't believe this LAFCO is a rich agency. In fact, it's funded by the county and the cities, and we have much larger problems to deal with. So I wouldn't expect you guys to pull out the garden hose and just start spraying everything, and, you know, things start flying way up in the air. And keep in mind that ultimately that will come back to the Board of Supervisors to the agreement, and, you know, we can whack it if we want to. So I suggest we not get crazy on the fees.
I know, but I don't think that there's a whole lot, with the exception of what was identified. I don't like surprises, to be honest with you. and then to have a conversation that ends up, and I'll be honest with you, I don't want to waste anybody's time, including mine, that where we meet together and then you guys want to say that we can do hiring processes in 5 days. We almost did that with the EO, but the idea is that I want to just be realistic, and because I always want to be able to stay true to the word, and representing a county administrator who works directly with the Board of Supervisors, I want to make sure that we do this in a very collegial manner, which I would love to spend time with Len and Ralph, as long as you bring cookies, Ralph, and then we'll go from there. But I want to get a sense, because I don't have a sense of what needs to be modified.
Okay. Well, I think I said, we don't want a divorce. We want to keep this going in a positive manner with some changes that make sense for both the county and for LAFCO. EGOTs, we represent the same citizens. And so, any further discussion? Anyone else in the audience? Thank you very much for the report. Wasn't always easy to do, but we appreciate it. We have a motion, we have a second.
Can we just also ask that Ralph is trying to keep us advised? I mean, these are, I guess, considered negotiations, and I don't know if we can discuss in closed session.
Can that be part of the motion?
I mean, I just want to be very involved because, like I said, I don't want to start spending a bunch more money. You know.
Right.
Well, I don't think any of us want to spend more.
I just want to put it on the record.
Sure. Okay, are we good?
Does the motion include Scott's addendum to the located out of East County?
That was my
That was part of the
motion.
motion. That was the motion.
We can,
I like that.
I'm sure there's some great, I know at one point, we actually considered moving my office out to the Martinelli Center. There was a small corner of the building. I know CDA has offices out there that maybe we can go into there.
The RCD does also.
It's way out there, but, you know, it's closer to the ranchers and people who probably use our services more, so I think that would be more appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, and just be clear on my motion, it does include having Splend and Ralph, Splend Splendora and Ralph Johnson as members of the ad hoc committee in the negotiation for the office.
All right, any concern with the motion as stated and seconded? Anyone from the public? All right, let's have a vote on the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? My goodness, we got through that. The item that took the most time, but that was well worthwhile. Any matter initiated by a member of the commission? Somebody want to bring anything up? No? Informational items. Questions or interest? Anything you want to bring up particularly?
I'll just bring up that there are currently no active proposals on file with the commission that remain under administrative review and or awaiting hearings to date. For the strategic plan update, one item to note is that QK Associates is underway with the data collection phase of our MSR on countywide water, wastewater, flood control, and stormwater study. Please refer to the legislative update from the Senate Governance Finance Committee, which has provided a summary of bills at the end of the legislature's 2018 session. And this may be viewed in the accompanying staff report. And just lastly, the Cal LAFCO quarterly report summarized some announcements, and among other items, the next staff workshop will be held in San Jose from April 10th through the 12th. And one more final thing, commissioners' returns ending in May 2019 are Wieskamp, Haggerty, and Halbert.
Along those lines, Madam Chair, could I please ask that, Sandy, would you get in touch with the president of the board, I guess it's going to be Larry, and make sure he reappoints?
Okay.
I think just make us all aware, those who have terms up on the process. I will tell you that we need to make sure of the next meeting date and where it will be. That's due normally after the Special District Association meeting, and I believe. And it was supposed to be at the East Bay Park District headquarters, but we are having a national forum that week. And so I've asked if they could change it to the following week, or perhaps Hayward could stay there. So let's make sure we check into that, and so we get the right place and the right time. And anything we need to do beforehand, just make the three of us aware.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Anything else to be brought before us? I think the next meeting is a Policy and Budget Committee meeting.
And
Yes.
I'd just like to comment, apparently no one was aware of the flood at the DSRSD office on November 10th. Apparently a pipe broke under the foundation, shot several hundred gallons of water through the building. When it was reported, there was about 3 inches of water standing in the entire building. A lot of mud came up, but to make the long story short, the building has been internally completely stripped, wallboard up 2 feet, all the office cubicles are gone, but they've done an amazing job. We're operating out of our operations center on Commerce Circle, but it's quite likely that our building will not be back to usable until maybe May or June.
So do we think that this would be where we'll be meeting for the unknown future? Do we know?
I can ask. If I wanted to wait until after this meeting
This
to
is
see
a
if you all want to meet
great
here.
place to meet.
Yeah,
The commissions here don't meet in the afternoon, so
it should work. Is that satisfactory with everyone? Because I think it's going to be quite a few months before they get that
yeah.
planning done, much less the reconstruction. You'll check on that?
Yes, I will.
Great, all right, that makes sense. Anything further to be brought forward?
And we could also go back where we used to be, which is in Hayward at CBA's building.
Oh, no, I'd like to hear. Maybe.
I'm just saying the options.
Oh, I know, but
We all don't want to commute that far.
I'm sure the mayor, Halbert, would like to have it here very convenient for him. And also for the
I don't
mayor.
think it's just Mayor Hobart.
I'm not going
There you go.
we'll find a place, but let's start with that. This seemed to work nicely, and we thank the city of Dublin for allowing us to have a meeting here. All right, if there's nothing further to be brought before us, meeting adjourned. My goodness.